Conservatives trying to rebuild trust in Muslim communities, while the growing power of the Muslim Canadian vote is made more self-apparent. This is the Great White North Report. So conservatives are trying to woo the Muslim vote right now, even though it's unlikely. The Liberals have basically tossed it away with Trudeau's policies sitting on the fence in regards to the Hamas-Israeli war. I'm actually on the support of the Israelis, and Hamas should be eradicated, and the people of the Gaza Strip should have to go through re-education because they've been brainwashed by radical Islamic theology. When I say radical Islamic theology, I basically mean Islamic theology. There's no ifs, ands, buts, and whys about it. But let's go on with the story. So Poilievre, he's trying to reach out to the Muslim Canadians. He talks about faith, family, and freedom. The thing is, Muslims are, probably 95% of them, maybe more, are very conservative people. Of our Muslim population, 15 to 25% of them are the radical kind, the far right. Not far left, far right. That's what our lefties fail to see. Our far left fails to see that the Muslim community is actually very far right. 15 to 25% of them. And the rest are just what they call moderate Muslims. But there are no moderate Muslims. And I'll get into that later. So he's talking about faith, family, and freedom. Well, Muslims are all about family. And they're all about faith. But they don't play well with other faiths. At first they do when they're in a minority. But the more Muslims you get in a community or an area, then the more they're going to not be so tolerant. You can see that in Western Europe. You see that in Muslim countries, how they treat their religious minorities. Ask the Coptic Christians of Egypt. Ask the Christians of Pakistan. Ask the Yazidis, who are Zoroastrians, out in the Syria-Iraq area. How well that fared for them. So you got to be careful. Now, freedom, Muslims like freedom, but they're not LGBTQ friendly. They're very against that. But under the Liberals, Trudeau managed to get all the marginalized intersectional groups together. He got the Muslim vote, he got the LGBTQ vote, and he got the Black Lives Matter vote, as well as he got everyone from who was partially center left. In the first election in 2016, he got a lot of the center votes and the lefties, people on the left. With the minority governments, he's lost most of the center and is now strictly on the left. I myself am a centralist. In some issues, I swing to the right, and in some issues, I swing to the left. LGBTQ, I'm actually a little more on the left, but I don't like the gender pronoun stupidity that goes on and that kind of stuff. I treat LGBTQ like any other Canadians, and that they are just Canadians. What I want to make clear is that I don't hate a particular group of people. In every race, creed, religion, community, whatever, color, whatever you want to call it, nationality, there's always at least one person worth knowing. Everyone, every culture, everywhere, there's always at least that one person worth knowing. So I don't hate a group per se, myself. I can dislike and disdain some things, but I don't hate. So let's get that out of the way. So Poilievre is trying to woo Muslims away from the Liberal Party because a lot of these Muslim immigrants come in and they don't have a lot, so they get a lot of free money from the government. A lot of taxpayer money goes to help them settle in, and so generally you vote. You remember that. So the NDP are also trying to woo these people, and that's what happened. The growing power of the Muslim voters have extended their influence. You see it with the protests going on in Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, Montreal, and they have forced Trudeau to cancel certain things. They've also forced the NDP to fire the NDP out in BC to fire an education minister because of some remarks they made. And they've also forced the NDP to put Palestinian matters in focus. They forced Trudeau to restore funding to UNRWA after he canceled it. Harper canceled UNRWA funding years ago. But then when Trudeau came in 2016, he started it again and then increased payments. And then after it came out that UNRWA employees were also a part of the Hamas attack, Trudeau suspended funding, but then he's restored it because of the Muslim pressure. Because as their population grows, it's going to be no surprise they're going to flex their new muscles. Islam is a political ideology. It is a totalitarian ideology trapped in the trappings of religion. That's a clear distinction. We in the West, like Western Christianity, tries to pigeonhole other religions in context to ours. Try to find the similarities instead of the differences, and it's failing with Islam. We don't have these problems with the Hindus and the Buddhists or the Sikhs. Because many parents of the Muslim organizations, they are very worried about the LGBTQ issues at schools. They don't want their kids going to school with gays. Islam is a very anti-gay religion. Very much so. Now, Muslims fear about Islamophobia. And you got to wonder, look at Western Europe, what they're going through right now. What the United States is going through right now in places like Minnesota and Michigan. New York. The aim of Islam is to impose Sharia law worldwide. And Sharia law is not a fun law. But Muslim parents are concerned about how LGBTQ is being portrayed in schools. I am more on the side that LGBT, it's okay to be gay. Same-sex marriage is okay. I don't know, it's hard to describe how I view it. If I see two same-sex people holding hands down the street or kissing in public, it's not a big deal to me. I'm not big on the transgender men going into a women's bathroom because I have two daughters. I am not in favor of the pronoun thing at school or different names because a lot of high school kids just do it for the hell of it. They're just experimenting, and because they can get away with it. I have a daughter in high school. She tells me this all the time. One week someone's gay, someone's a lesbian. The next week she's bisexual. And the next week she's got a boyfriend. They go through the whole he, she, they, them. Now, I agree with conservatives, let parents raise their kids. Now, I think part of the problem with Islam is our irresponsible immigration policies. I would have kept immigration from Muslim countries very low because, like I said, 15 to 25% of these Muslims that come in are very radicalized. Meaning what I mean by that is they take the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Hadith literally, and that's not a good thing. So the Muslim community is not LGBTQ, and they're not very women-friendly either. In the long run, feminism is against Islamic ideology. So Trudeau is also, because he's pushing this LGBTQ agenda, that transphobia, homophobia, and bisphobia have no place in this country. Didn't you know bisphobia was a thing? Muslims are not going to respond to that well. There are gay Muslims. They're in the closet and they're hiding because in a Muslim country, being gay or being LGBTQ is as good as a death sentence in a lot of Muslim countries. So there's been a lot of the Muslim Association of Canada, the Imams of Canada, the Canadian Council of Canadian Muslims has been very pushy lately in getting their agenda. We also have a terrorist group called Samadoun operating openly in the streets of Toronto and Montreal. It was banned in Germany. We have chants of river to the sea. People don't understand what that means. That means the complete destruction of Israel, which is a thriving democracy. So I don't understand that. We're going to get a political awakening for Canadian Muslims. They will join together solely based on religion, and they will vote as a bloc. And they're mostly in urban areas, and that's where the Liberal stronghold is, and the NDP stronghold is. Mostly in urban areas. It's going to split those two, and the Conservatives might squeak in a few urban seats this time around. Now, Muslims are from very, very different countries. I know that very well. But Islam is the thing that binds them together because it is a very controlling religion. Most Muslims don't really know much about their religion. They know the basics. Just like a lot of Christians don't know everything, but just the basics. And any other religious group. It's when you do a deep dive, which is 15 to 25% of the radicals, which I talked about, they know what's going on. And the more Muslims you bring over, the more that's going to happen, and the more the Muslims who are passive or moderate are going to be forced to do stuff they wouldn't normally do. Because look at what's happening in Israel. As soon as the Jews do something as soon as there's a war in Palestine, all the Muslims gather together, even though they know nothing about the conflict. Indonesian and Filipino Muslims know absolutely nothing about what's really going on in the Middle East, the whole Israeli thing. How many from other countries really know what's going on? Many Middle Eastern Muslims celebrated when Hamas attacked Israel and killed a bunch of people. They didn't care. That's jihad to them. In Michigan, you got 100,000 Michigan Democrats marked uncommitted on their primary ballot rather than support the incumbent after an organized campaign by Arab American groups. Again, political Islam. It's going to become a problem. But they only represent 2.5% of Michigan's population. Toronto is 10% Muslim, Montreal is 9%. That's a big voting bloc. Our immigration policy is going to bite us in the ass. Now, some think that the Muslim vote could swing back to conservatives in wake of woke outrages. Wokeness is not helping the liberal cause. By jumping on the woke bandwagon, Muslims are going to be pushed back to the conservatives or the NDP. Probably the NDP. Because the NDP do a lot of stuff that gives free money away or gives free services. Makes services free, we just pay more taxes. Like I said, I would rather see us have no more immigration from Muslim countries right now. And I would like to see the Muslims of Canada start reforming their religion, which would make it much more palatable. Because if we continue with our immigration policies as they are, and like I said, there's 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, 15 to 25% of those are the radical kind. And you make that a microcosm in Canada, where we have something over like just over a million Muslims, and 15 to 25% of them are radical. There's hate. I did a video already on an imam in Vancouver, head of the Muslim Youth League in Vancouver, British Columbia area. He was talking about violence towards non-Muslims, yet he's not arrested. That's hate. What he was doing was hate speech. There's a lot of things to go over that. It's a dangerous game, and I would be very careful how you treat it. So this is a good website to go to. Basic things everybody in the West should know about Islam. Islam is not a religion of peace. It's not. All you have to do is go through this website, and it really describes Islam for beginners. I read this, and I agree with a lot of this. A Muslim is a person. Islam is what a Muslim is supposed to believe in and follows the words and laws written down in books. Many Muslims are innocent, misguided believers. It's so easy to get them wound up. Look at what's happening with the Hamas-Israeli war. How they've made Israel into the perpetrators instead of going after the people who have been constantly egging the Hamas on and supporting them. At its core, every Muslim does support a theocracy, the Sharia, when supporting Islam and follows a cult leader, Muhammad, who wants to kill all non-Muslims and has also sworn to follow his doctrine, the Shahada. It is true. Either you have to submit to Islam, and if you don't convert, you pay the jizya, which is a tax, or you are killed. It's that simple. This is what happens when Islam has a control over a population. I mentioned Egypt and Pakistan. Those countries, they pay the jizya. The Jews used to pay the jizya when they were spread throughout North Africa and the Middle East until 1948 when they all got expelled. They were unceremoniously kicked out or fled, depending on the circumstances. And now there's very few Jews left in Muslim countries. And they probably still pay the jizya. So this is what I'm talking about. Passive Muslim will have no interaction with Islam. That's true. Most Muslims in Canada they do the basic stuff. A moderate Muslim will have little interaction with Islam. A devout Muslim will eat, sleep, and breathe Islam. And that's where it gets dangerous. Islam is bad, but it does not mean that all Muslims are bad. But if you know a good Muslim, it does not mean that Islam is good. Like I was saying, there's always one person worth knowing in everywhere. It's a very interesting article. It does go through what you can expect. To understand Islam better, you have to understand that 14% of the textual doctrine of Islam can be found in the Quran, 26% can be found in the Seers, and 60% can be found in the Hadiths. The Hadiths didn't start appearing until 200 years after the supposed death of Muhammad. Al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim are the two most famous. So they're following words that they think came from Muhammad 200 years after the fact. That's the kind of stuff we're getting. And this is the most dangerous part right here. The Hadiths. Islam has one goal: make Sharia the law of the land in every land worldwide. Everything else is subordinate to this. Eventually, that's what they want. That's what the imams want. That's the goal of their... And we in the West ignore that to our peril. So how do I feel about the conservatives trying to rebuild trust in Muslim communities? If it splits them, if a third vote conservative, a third vote NDP, and a third stay with the liberals, that's great. But we really need to understand Islam and how it works. Look how it's already changed our policies towards Israel. 30 years ago, we wouldn't have this problem. We'd be a staunch ally of Israel. Still, most of us still are. Most of us think the Middle East is a hellhole. Why else would their people come here? So Poilievre will, most Muslims will see no choice but to vote conservative this time around, even though they think the conservatives are also Islamophobic. Now, am I Islamophobic to the point where I understand the dangers of it? Yes, but I'm not going to go around like them and do jihad, because I don't believe in that stuff. Jihad means if you die in the service of Islam, then you'll go straight to paradise, and that's in the context of war. So I urge people to read that article, Islam for Dummies, islam-for-dummies.com. It's a very interesting article. It doesn't lie. I have read the Quran. 4 of them, actually. There's more than one. There's about 30 official ones and a whole bunch of other ones. So I've read 4 different Qurans. I've read Ibn Kathir's, Hafs, which 95% of the Muslim world uses now, since 1924 anyway. Warsh, which about 4% of Muslims use in North Africa, and a guy named Asim's. I've read al-Bukhari's hadiths. There's like 7,000 hadiths, like sayings of Muhammad, but about 3,000 of them are just repeats. So it is a very interesting read. Also, Dr. J. Smith, Dr. David Wood, Dr. Robert Spencer, Dr. Stephen Shoemaker, Canadian Dr. Dan Gibson. They can be found on YouTube and to help you understand what's going on. Poilievre should try and sway some Muslim communities to vote conservative. It would help, because we really do need to get rid of Trudeau. And I hope Poilievre won't bow down to the pressure that Singh and Trudeau have in getting less than 5% of the population to do what the other 95% really don't want. But anyway, and Canadians out there, let me know what you guys think about what the Conservatives are trying to do and what the Muslims of Canada have been doing. Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report. I'm in love.